I still remember the exact moment my phone buzzed after 10 years of silence. And I swear my heart almost stopped because the name on the screen was my daughter's. The same daughter who hadn't spoken to me, looked at me, or even acknowledged my existence for a full decade. And the reason she was calling wasn't an apology, it wasn't regret, it wasn't love. It was because she'd found out I won the lottery. So tell me this before you judge anything else I say. If your own child erased you from their life for 10 years and only came back when money entered the picture, would you even answer that call? Or would you do exactly what I did next? I'm not proud of everything that happened, but I am tired of pretending this story doesn't hurt. People love to say, a parent should always forgive. But they don't live with the nights I lived through, the empty birthdays, the unanswered messages, the years where I questioned if I was even still a father. So before anyone jumps to conclusions, let me take you back to how all of this actually started, because this didn't begin with a lottery ticket. It began long before that, when my daughter decided I was no longer worthy of being in her life. I had my daughter, Emily, when I was 29 years old. Her mother, Laura, and I had been married for 6 years at that point. We weren't perfect, but we were stable. I worked a regular job in logistics, long hours, nothing glamorous, but it paid the bills. Laura stayed home with Emily for the first few years, and I genuinely believed we were doing okay. Emily was my world. I was the dad who carried her on his shoulders at the park, who stayed up late assembling toys on Christmas Eve, who learned how to braid hair even though my fingers fumbled. I wasn't emotionally distant. I wasn't abusive. I wasn't absent. I was there. Or at least, I thought I was. Things started to change when Emily was about 13. Laura and I began arguing more, mostly about money. I won't lie, we struggled. Bills piled up, and I was stressed all the time. Laura accused me of not trying hard enough, of being content with just surviving. I accused her of not understanding how much pressure I was under. Those arguments slowly poisoned the atmosphere in our home. Emily saw more than she should have, and I regret that deeply. Kids absorb everything, even when you think they're not listening. When Emily was 15, Laura and I divorced. It was messy, emotional, and painful. Laura was furious, and I later realized she used that anger as a weapon. She told Emily things about me that simply weren't true. That I didn't want them. That I cared more about money than family. That I was selfish. I didn't know how bad it was until Emily started pulling away. She stopped laughing around me. She answered in short sentences. She stopped asking me to come to her school events. The day she told me she wanted to live full time with her mother felt like a knife to the chest. I remember sitting in my car afterward, gripping the steering wheel so hard my hands hurt, asking myself what I'd done wrong. The court allowed it, saying Emily was old enough to choose. I was given visitation weekends, holidays, but Emily rarely showed up. There was always an excuse, a friend's birthday, homework. She wasn't feeling well. Eventually, she stopped responding to my calls altogether. I tried everything. I sent texts. I wrote emails. I mailed birthday cards with handwritten notes inside, telling her I loved her, that I was proud of her, that I was always here. Most of them came back unopened. Some didn't come back at all, and I don't know which hurt more. Laura never encouraged Emily to maintain a relationship with me. In fact, she actively discouraged it, and I was too exhausted, too emotionally beaten down, to fight as hard as I should have. The final conversation I had with Emily still echoes in my head. She was 18. I called her to congratulate her on graduating high school. She answered, and for a moment, I thought maybe things were finally changing. But instead, she told me flatly that she didn't want me in her life anymore. She said I had failed her. That I had failed her mother. That she didn't need me. I tried to speak, to explain, but she cut me off and said, "Please don't contact me again." Then she hung up. That was it. 10 years of silence followed. During those 10 years, I watched my daughter grow up through social media I wasn't allowed to interact with. I saw photos of her college graduation, her new apartment, her friends, her smile that no longer included me. I didn't comment. I didn't like. I just looked. Every birthday, I typed out a message and deleted it. Every Christmas, I bought a gift and returned it. You don't ever really stop being a parent, even when your child decides you're disposable. Life went on, but it was hollow. I worked, came home, ate dinner alone. I didn't remarry. I didn't have more kids. A part of me felt frozen in time, stuck at the moment my daughter walked out of my life. Therapy helped a little, but there was always this quiet grief that never left. People told me, she'll come around eventually. I clung to that hope longer than I should have. Then, one random Friday evening, everything changed. I stopped at a gas station after work and bought a lottery ticket. I didn't even check it right away. It sat on my kitchen counter for 2 days. When I finally scanned it, my phone froze for a second, and then the screen lit up with numbers that didn't make sense. I checked again, and again. I had won. Not millions and millions, but enough to completely change my life. Enough to never worry about bills again. Enough to finally breathe. I didn't tell anyone at first. I hired a lawyer. I met with a financial advisor. I followed every piece of advice about staying quiet. But news has a way of leaking, especially when your name ends up on a public record. Somehow, through mutual acquaintances, Laura found out. And through Laura, Emily found out. 10 years of silence. 10 years of nothing. And suddenly my phone buzzed. Seeing her name felt surreal. My hands shook. My chest tightened. For a brief moment, I let myself believe this was it. This was the apology. This was the moment she realized she'd been wrong. This was my chance to have my daughter back. I answered. Her voice sounded older, but familiar. Dad? She didn't say, "I'm sorry." She said, "Hi, it's Emily. I heard about the lottery. Congratulations." That was it. No acknowledgement of the past. No recognition of the pain. Just congratulations. We talked awkwardly for a few minutes. She asked how I was. I asked how she was. It felt like two strangers making small talk in an elevator. Then she suggested we meet for coffee. She said she wanted to reconnect. That word hit me like a punch. Reconnect. As if we'd simply drifted apart naturally. Not like she'd cut me out of her life completely. I agreed to meet her, because despite everything, I'm still her father, and part of me desperately wanted to see her face, to look into her eyes, and see if there was any genuine emotion there. We met at a cafe halfway between our homes. When she walked in, I barely recognized her. She was confident, well-dressed, composed. She hugged me, but it felt stiff, rehearsed. We talked for over an hour. She told me about her job, her plans, her life. She asked about mine, but only vaguely. Then the conversation slowly shifted. She mentioned how expensive everything was now, how hard it was to save, how she worried about her future. And then she said it, casually, almost jokingly. "I guess things are easier for you now, huh?" That's when it hit me. This wasn't about me. This wasn't about healing. This was about money. I didn't confront her right away. I wanted to believe there was more beneath the surface. But as we continued meeting over the next few weeks, the pattern became clear. Every conversation circled back to finances, investments, helping family. She never once apologized. She never acknowledged the 10 years she erased me. It was like those years didn't matter, because now I was useful. And that's where I'll pause this story for now, because this was the moment everything truly started to unravel. I was standing at a crossroads, torn between the father I had always been and the man I had become after 10 years of being forgotten. I had to decide whether love meant unlimited forgiveness, or whether self-respect finally needed to come first. This was the choice that led to the biggest confrontation of my life, and the consequences that followed still divide everyone who hears this story. So that's the situation I was in. Before I tell you what happened next, before I explain the decision I made and how it changed everything, I want you to think about what you would have done in my place. Would you have opened your arms without question? Would you have set boundaries? Or would you have walked away entirely? Part 2 is where the truth comes out, where the confrontation happens, and where you'll finally understand why some people say I went too far, and others say I didn't go far enough. I left that cafe that day with my mind spinning and my chest heavy, because seeing my daughter again didn't heal anything the way I had fantasized it would during all those lonely years. Instead, it ripped open wounds I had learned to survive with. I sat in my car afterward for a long time, just staring at the steering wheel, replaying every word she'd said, every pause, every carefully chosen sentence. The hardest part wasn't that she mentioned money. It was that she never once mentioned the pain, the silence, or the fact that she had erased me from her life for 10 years like I was nothing. And still, I told myself maybe it was just awkwardness. Maybe she didn't know how to start. Maybe time would soften things. So I kept meeting her. Coffee turned into lunches, lunches turned into dinners. On the surface, it looked like a reconciliation. Friends who knew bits and pieces told me how lucky I was, how beautiful it was that my daughter had come back. They didn't see what I saw. They didn't hear what I heard. Every conversation slowly drifted back to my finances. She asked about my house. She asked if I planned to move. She asked what kind of investments I was making. Once, she even joked about how nice it must feel to never have to worry again. Each time, something inside me tightened. I kept waiting for the moment she would finally say it. "I'm sorry." 2 words. That's all it would have taken to crack me open completely. But those words never came. Instead, one evening over dinner, she leaned forward, lowered her voice, and said, "So, have you thought about how you're going to help family with all this?" I remember putting my fork down slowly, feeling my appetite vanish. I asked her what she meant. She smiled, almost nervously, and said, "I mean, I've got student loans. Rent keeps going up. It would be nice to have some security. You're my dad." That last sentence hurt more than anything else she'd said. Because now, suddenly, I was her dad again. Not when I begged for a relationship. Not when I cried myself to sleep wondering what I'd done wrong. But now, when I had something she wanted. I asked her directly, "Emily, why now?" She looked confused, like the question itself annoyed her. She said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Why did you disappear for 10 years, and now you want to reconnect?" Her expression hardened. She told me she was young, that she was hurt, that she had needed space. She said she didn't owe me an explanation, and maybe she was right, but I also didn't owe her my bank account. That night, I went home and didn't sleep. I walked through my quiet house, past framed photos I'd never taken down, her as a little girl on my shoulders, her missing teeth smile, her first bike. I realized something painful, but clarifying. I had been grieving a daughter who no longer existed. The woman sitting across from me now was someone else entirely. Before I tell you what I did next, I want you to pause for a second. Imagine being in my shoes. Imagine your child cutting you out completely, ignoring your existence for a decade, and then walking back into your life only after money appears. What would you do? Would you give them everything just to keep them close? Or would you protect yourself for once? I want you to really think about that, because what I did next is the part everyone argues about. The next time Emily asked to meet, I decided it was time for honesty. No more pretending. No more tiptoeing. We met at my house. It was the first time she'd been there since she was a teenager. She looked around like a guest, not like someone returning home. I made coffee, and we sat at the table where I used to help her with homework. I told her calmly that I wasn't going to give her money. Not now, not like this. I said if she wanted a relationship, a real one, it had to be about rebuilding trust, not finances. I told her I needed acknowledgement of the past. I needed accountability. I needed to hear that she understood what her absence had done to me. She stared at me like I'd just insulted her. Then she laughed. Actually laughed, she said. "You're really going to hold the past against me." I told her it wasn't about holding it against her. It was about healing it. She rolled her eyes and said, "You always were dramatic." That sentence snapped something in me. 10 years of swallowed pain suddenly had a voice. I told her about the birthdays I spent alone, the cards returned unopened, the nights I wondered if I was even alive to her. I told her how many times I almost showed up unannounced just to see her face, and how I stopped myself because I didn't want to be that parent. I told her I never stopped loving her, even when she made it clear she didn't love me. For the first time, she looked uncomfortable, but not apologetic. Uncomfortable. She crossed her arms and said, "Well, Mom had her reasons," and there it was, Laura. Still between us. Still poisoning the well. I realized then that Emily wasn't just indifferent to my pain, she had justified it. In her mind, I deserved it. The conversation escalated quickly after that. She accused me of choosing work over family. I reminded her that everything I did was to keep a roof over our heads. She accused me of abandoning her mother. I reminded her that relationships are complicated, and divorce doesn't mean abandonment. Eventually, she stood up and said, "I guess I made a mistake coming here. I thought you'd want to help your own daughter." I stood up too, my hands shaking. I said, "I wanted to be your father. You didn't want that." Silence filled the room. Heavy, final. She left without another word, no hug, no goodbye, just the sound of the door closing, echoing through my house like it did 10 years ago. I thought that would be the end of it. I really did. But then the messages started, first from Laura, accusing me of being cruel, of punishing my daughter, of choosing money over family, then from extended relatives who had suddenly found my number. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone told me what a good father should do. None of them asked what I had already endured. Emily sent one last message a week later. It said, "I can't believe you'd do this to me. I thought you'd changed." I stared at that message for a long time before replying. I wrote, deleted, rewrote. Finally, I sent one sentence. "I did change. I learned to value myself." After that, the silence returned. But this time it felt different. It wasn't rejection. It was a boundary. In the months that followed, I set up my life carefully. I donated to causes I cared about. I helped friends who had stood by me when I had nothing. I even set aside a trust, quietly, with conditions that if Emily ever truly wanted reconciliation, therapy included, it would be there. I never told her. It wasn't about control. It was about intention. Sometimes, late at night, I still miss her. I still imagine what could have been. But I also sleep better knowing I didn't buy a relationship that should have been based on love. Money can fix a lot of things, but it can't fix resentment or entitlement. So now, I'll ask you again. Was I wrong for not opening my wallet just to keep my daughter close? Or was I finally right to protect myself after 10 years of being invisible? Like this video if you were on my side, or even if you're conflicted, because life isn't black and white. Subscribe for more stories like this, because I promise, real life is messier than fiction, and please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. I read every single one. I'll see you all in the next story.